My name does not matter much in this story. What matters is what I heard on that day, floating near a broken ship in the middle of empty space, far from home. I was a medic. My job was to help people who were hurt after battles between humans and other space nations. That day, my team was sent to check a damaged alien ship called a cruiser. It belonged to the Vakari, a proud and powerful species known for never showing weakness. They almost never cried, not even in front of their own families. That was what every book and every officer had told me. I believed it, because I had never met a Vakari closely enough to know better. The order was simple: go in, check for survivors, mark the ship as lost if there was no sign of life, and leave quickly. A larger Vakari fleet was expected to arrive soon, and no one wanted a small rescue mission to turn into a bigger problem. My captain told us we had only 10 minutes. After that, everyone had to return to our ship and prepare to leave the area. I followed my team through the broken hallways of the cruiser. The ship was silent, except for small clicks and creaks, the kind of sounds a wrecked place makes when it settles into stillness. My team found a few escape pods, already empty, and one area that was too damaged to enter safely. After the 10 minutes were up, my team turned back. I should have gone with them. But then I heard something through my helmet. It was faint, almost hidden behind the static of my equipment, but it caught my attention right away. It sounded like crying. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The Vakari were known for controlling their emotions completely, especially in front of outsiders. Crying, especially in public, was seen as a deep sign of weakness among their people. It was almost shocking to think that sound could be real. I told my team I needed one more minute. They warned me that time was almost up, but I ignored the warning and moved toward the sound. I told myself I would turn back if it turned out to be nothing important, just wind moving through broken metal or some equipment malfunction. The sound grew clearer as I moved deeper into the ship. It led me to a small room that must have once been beautiful. Torn silk curtains floated gently in the low gravity. Broken glass ornaments spun slowly through the air like tiny stars. And in the corner, curled into a tight ball, was a young Vakari. She had large black eyes, common to her species, and long dark hair that drifted around her face. On her head was a golden crown, slightly bent from the crash. Her eyes were full of exhaustion and fear. She flinched when my light reached her, pulling herself even tighter into the corner, as if trying to disappear. I understood right away that she was afraid of me. I lowered my light so it would not shine directly at her face, and I raised my hands slowly to show that I meant no harm. My translator device had been damaged earlier that day, so I could not speak her language, but I hoped my voice, calm and steady, might help her feel a little safer. "It is okay," I said softly, even though I knew she could not understand my words. "I am not here to hurt you." She stared at me for a long moment. Her body was shaking, and small drops of tears floated away from her face in slow circles, caught in the low gravity of the broken ship. It was strange and sad to watch, tears drifting like tiny beads of light instead of falling the way they do on solid ground. I moved closer, very slowly, and knelt beside her. I did not try to touch her right away. I simply stayed there, letting her see that I was calm and steady. After a while, she reached out and grabbed my arm, holding on tightly, as if she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. My team called through the radio, asking where I was, and reminding me that time was almost finished. I told them I had found a survivor and needed help. There was a pause, then my captain's voice, sharp and worried, told me to bring her out immediately. I tried to lift her gently, but she resisted, curling tighter into herself and shaking her head. I realized then that she was not just afraid of the wreckage, she was grieving. I found out later, through a working translator on our ship, that her entire guard, people who had promised since her childhood to protect her with their own lives, had been lost when the ship was first struck. She was the last one of her personal group still alive. For a Vakari, this kind of loss was more than sadness. It was seen as a terrible failure, something that could bring shame to her entire family line if anyone saw her cry over it. Even though she could not explain any of this to me at the time, I understood the shape of her sorrow simply by watching her. Grief does not need words to be understood. It shows itself the same way in every living being, no matter what planet they come from. I made a decision that went against my orders. Instead of rushing her out immediately, I stayed beside her a little longer, letting her feel safe before asking her to move. I kept my voice low and steady, humming a quiet, simple tune my mother used to sing when I was a child. I do not know if it helped her understand anything, but her shaking slowed, little by little. My captain was not happy about the delay, but there was no more time to argue. Slowly, carefully, I helped her float toward the exit, keeping my hands steady around hers the entire way. She did not let go once, not even when we reached the airlock of our own ship and safety was finally close. When we returned, my superiors were unhappy about the risk I had taken. Officers argued that a medic should never delay a rescue mission for personal reasons, especially when the safety of the whole team was involved. I understood their point of view, but I also knew, deep in my heart, that leaving her behind crying and alone would have haunted me far longer than any punishment they could give. Once we were safely away from the wreckage, our onboard translator was repaired enough to allow basic communication. Through it, I learned her name, Izvieth, heir to a powerful Vakari family that had influence across many worlds. She was young, barely more than a child by human standards, thrown suddenly into a position of great responsibility after losing everyone who had once protected her. At first, she remained quiet and distant from the rest of the crew, unsure of how to act among strangers from another world. But she often sat near me, even when we could not speak easily to each other. Slowly, with the translator's help, small conversations began. She asked simple questions about my life, my home, and why I had risked trouble to help her. I told her the truth. Where I come from, we do not believe that crying is something shameful. We believe that showing sadness after a great loss is part of being alive, not a weakness to hide. I told her that a person who has lost everyone they love has every right to cry, no matter what title or crown they carry. She listened carefully, her black eyes studying me as if trying to understand something completely new. For her people, showing such emotion, especially in front of an outsider, was almost unheard of. Vakari children were raised from a young age to hide sadness completely, believing that emotional control was a sign of strength and honor. During the following days, as arrangements were made to safely return her to her family's territory, she spoke more openly with me. She admitted that she had been taught her entire life that crying was dangerous, that it could bring shame to her family name. But in that lonely, broken ship, surrounded by the loss of everyone she loved, she said she simply could not hold the sadness inside any longer. I told her that was completely understandable, and nothing to be ashamed of. Emotions, especially grief, are not signs of weakness. They are proof of how deeply someone can care for others. When we finally arrived at the meeting point where Vakari officials were waiting to receive her, she paused before leaving our ship. Through the translator, she thanked me formally, using words that were clearly practiced and official. But before stepping through the door, she turned back and said something simpler, something that did not need much translation to understand. She said that I was the only person who had not looked away from her sadness. After she left, I returned to my normal duties, and life slowly went back to what it was before. Many months passed without any word from her world. I assumed that our meeting had been a small, forgotten moment in a much larger and more important political story that no longer involved someone like me. Then, one day, a message arrived through official diplomatic channels. It was from Izvieth herself. She explained that after returning home, she had spoken openly to her family council about what had happened in the wreckage of her ship. She described, honestly and without hiding, how she had cried, and how a stranger from another world had stayed beside her, instead of judging her. Her story caused quite a stir within Vakari society. Some elders were surprised and disapproved strongly, believing she had shamed her family by admitting such weakness openly. But many others, especially younger Vakari, were deeply moved by her honesty. Slowly, a small movement began among her people, questioning whether hiding all emotion truly made someone strong, or whether it simply caused unnecessary suffering in silence. Izvieth used her position of influence carefully and bravely to speak about this change. Over time, some very old traditions began shifting, allowing Vakari people more freedom to express grief honestly, especially after significant losses. It was not an overnight change, and certainly not something every Vakari accepted immediately. but it marked the beginning of an important shift in how her people understood emotional strength. In her message, she thanked me again, this time in her own simple words rather than formal diplomatic language. She said that meeting me had taught her an important lesson, that true strength does not come from hiding sadness, but from having the courage to feel it honestly, even in front of others. I still keep that message saved carefully among my personal belongings. Sometimes, when my work feels difficult or unimportant, I remember that day in the wreckage, and I remind myself that even a small act of kindness can create change far beyond what we expect. I am not someone who set out to change an entire civilization. I was simply a tired medic, following a strange sound through broken hallways, unwilling to leave a frightened, grieving individual completely alone in the darkness. Sometimes, the smallest choices we make, choices to stay a little longer, to listen a little closer, to show kindness without expecting anything in return, are the ones that matter most in the end. That day taught me something I still carry with me. Kindness does not need to be loud or dramatic to matter. Sometimes, it is simply about noticing someone else's pain and choosing not to look away.